The humble Rubik's Cube. What started as a novel architecture project has become one of the century's most popular puzzles. With 6 faces, 20 pieces, and over 54 quintillion possible combinations, the prospect of tackling this challenge might appear daunting or perhaps even impossible for some. However, 54 quintillion is only slightly fewer than the number of emails in my inbox after signing up for a college board account. I want to convince you guys that cubing is actually quite easy and explain its effects on my life. What started as a simple fascination has grown into a journey of attaining a Guinness World Record. But at its core, it's about the joy of figuring things out one twist at a time. After seeing videos of people like Felix Zemdegs and Mats Walk making the rounds of internet forums and YouTube, I wanted to solve the Rubik's Cube. Not using any conventional algorithms, but intuitively. Around the same time, a family friend of mine gifted me 2 identical Rubik's Cubes. I shuffled one of them while leaving the other in a fully solved state. I played around with the solved cube, trying to make patterns, and figured out that any sequence repeated a given set number of times will make the puzzle return back to its original state. While it seems quite obvious now, I felt like I'd made a breakthrough. The first layer was always easy, after which I struggled to make bigger blocks. But I found a method to move around the pieces in a predictable manner and retrace it back with a few other pieces solved. This wasn't my invention though. This was my first introduction to commutators and conjugates. Well, the terms commutators and conjugates sound quite complex. It's just a method to move around the pieces in a predictable manner. Consider commutators, for example. It just represents algorithms of the structure A, B, A prime, B prime, where A and B are subsequences and A prime represents the inverse of a given substring. It's just a method to take a step back to move 2 steps forward. It's quite poetic that you need to break up our previous progress to move ahead. I wanted to find out how these algorithms actually work, which turned out to be quite a bad idea. This felt like opening Pandora's box for me, trying to explore the basics of set theory, group theory, and topology to try to make sense of how these algorithms actually work. While I understood very little then, this somehow laid the foundations for my love for maths. I'll never forget the feeling of solving my first ever Rubik's Cube. It wasn't perfect, but at that moment, I felt unstoppable. I immediately jumped onto the internet to find better methods when I stumbled across the CFOB method that I still currently use. At the heart of cubing is the art of simplification. It's easy to look at a scrambled puzzle and see complete chaos, but through pattern recognition, you learn to see order in the complexity. How many of you play chess regularly? You may have heard of chess masters talking about looking 10 to 15 moves into the game, but it all comes down to simplifying the task at hand. Via solved positions and chunking, you're able to just focus on a small section of the puzzle while neglecting the rest. And the same applies for Rubik's Cubes, where you look at a small part and neglect the rest, making the solve a series of small, simpler steps rather than a single overwhelming task. This is something that has extended over into other aspects of my life, including academics and coding. And it's often the fact that breaking down these complex challenges into smaller, more manageable chunks and relating it back to previous experience is the key to success. But cubing isn't just about algorithms and efficiency. It's about muscle memory and turning speed. These algorithms just serve as a tool, while it was you who had to identify the cases and execute the same. Countless hours of preparation has ingrained specific sequences of moves in my muscle memory, allowing me to execute them without conscious thought. Moreover, these ingrained formula or algorithms allows me to execute them and focus more on look ahead. Being a musician, I treat the Rubik's Cube in a similar manner to percussion. The rhythmic nature of algorithms often allows me to memorize them more easily. Moreover, transfer of skills like dexterity and repetition from music were skills that I did not expect to transfer that conveniently in the first place. But cubing isn't just about speed, it's about focus. That's where the idea of flow state comes in. Flow is essentially the altered state of consciousness, and it's when you're hyper-focused at the task at hand. Flow is when the difficulty of the task is just sufficient enough that everything else seems to disappear. But flow had its drawbacks. cubing also became a sort of distractions. Distractions in the sort of social media, competitions, and other side projects, and let's face it, procrastination. Maintaining the delicate balance of procrastinating just enough to freak out about the task at hand and leaving me with just sufficient time to finish the said task is a skill that I managed to master in the last couple of years. The 3 by 3 is actually quite a simple puzzle. The beginner's method I learned only used 4 algorithms. These were more than sufficient to get me through a simple solve. But as I learned more and practiced more, I developed my skills. Today, I know over 600 algorithms for my main events. And this taught me that expertise isn't just about knowing everything from the start, but building a repertoire over time, piece by piece. But this realization didn't come easily though. Just a few years ago, I was a restless, ambitious kid who loved learning. I'd dive headfirst into new hobbies and skills just to lose interest after 6 months. Every new obsession ended with a feeling of emptiness, a feeling that I'd explored everything yet belonged nowhere. I didn't know how to fill that void. In the rush to widen my knowledge base, I forgot to enjoy the learning process, leaving me indecisive at a critical point during my life in 10th grade when I had to decide my career. My career counselor asked me to take a step back to look at the stuff that interested me. This led me to identify computational approaches to issues in different fields. This retrospective analysis, this looking back, proved to be as important as looking ahead to what the future holds. Around 2018, I began trying out other events, from the standard N/N events to the unorthodox side events like Scube and Square One. While the standard N/N events are actually quite good, I found myself enjoying the unorthodox side events a lot more. I practiced Scube and Square One and became quite good at it. Around 2019, I began averaging around 4.5 seconds on the Scube. For the first time, I thought to myself, I can do more than just compete. I could set a world record or even be nationally ranked. But fear did instantly set in. What if I mess up? What if I'm not good enough? What if my efforts go in vain? But this aspiration would have died as a dream if I had not acted upon it. This thought continued to linger in my mind for every day, for an entire year, just growing and lingering every single day. During 2020, I decided to act upon it, suddenly having a lot of free time and a lot of time to waste. So I decided to practice this cube. Around 2021, I began averaging around 3.5 seconds. And by the end of 2023, I began averaging around high 2 seconds. And I decided to apply for the Guinness World Record. The day of the Guinness World Record arrived. Almost 4 years of continuous practice had reached this tipping point. Despite the enormous pressure, I still somehow felt calm. The first 12 hours were completely smooth sailing, finishing almost 6,000 solves. But as midnight approached, the solves became more difficult. My mind was fatigued, and muscle memory and the encouragement of the people around me was the only thing that kept me going. The 12 to 4 a.m. stretch was very difficult, but as the sun rose, my pacing improved. As the countdown ticked to 1, I solved my final cube. There was sudden silence in the room, after which there was a sudden change in the atmosphere. Everybody began cheering. Friends, family, teachers, and even acquaintances. Then I realized it. I'd done it. I had just set a world record in cubing. Over 9,000 solves, 8 seconds per cube, countless hours of preparation. I had set a world record in cubing. I had just set a world record in cubing, and my biggest takeaway was that my wrists can hurt in more ways than I thought possible. Even though a lot had changed on the day I set the record, some things never changed. I took a day off to relax, and the day I returned, my physics teacher asked me for my homework assignment. For many, a Rubik's Cube is just a simple puzzle lying in the corner of the table. But for me, it's been a journey of discovery, persistence, and growth. Cubing became that passion that grew into something bigger. Cubing became that spark for me. Whether through the thrill of setting a world record or the simple joy of solving a puzzle, cubing has always been a constant reminder that with constant practice, even the most complex challenges can be broken down and simplified. But we all have a passion, It could be a hobby, it could be a skill, or an idea that excites you, something that defines you as a person. Stick to it and watch it ignite something bigger, perhaps a world record or an invaluable contribution to society. Thank you.